everyone, Colt Capperrune here. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, it's time for parallel compression secrets of the pros. Today we're going to talk about what is parallel compression, what are all the different ways that you can use parallel compression, how to set it up in your DAW of choice, and then also jump into Pro Tools and give you guys some sound examples and show you exactly how I use parallel compression, how you set it up, and how to hear the differences. What is parallel compression? Parallel compression is when you are mixing a compressed source with an uncompressed source. For instance, maybe you have a snare drum and you have a version of the snare drum that is completely uncompressed and the version of the snare drum that is very compressed, and you're blending those together with the faders or with a mix knob or with something else to blend the compressed signal with the uncompressed signal. Now you can use parallel compression on literally anything, but I think the most common places are like kick drums and snare drums, drum buses, bass guitar, and vocals. Those are the most common places that people use parallel compression. For me, I mostly use parallel compression on drums and drum buses, but we're going to show you how to use it on everything in this video. And there are three basic ways that parallel compression is set up. Now I want to explain this to you before we jump into Pro Tools so that way you understand what's going on while I'm showing it to you. The first way to use parallel compression is to just take your track, whatever track you'd like parallel compression on, and duplicate it. So now you have two tracks that are identical, and then you would just put a compressor on one of them and then blend those two tracks to taste. So you take a snare drum, for instance, you would duplicate that snare track, so now you have two identical snare tracks. You would put a compressor on one of the snare tracks and then blend to taste. You can do this on any instrument or vocal or anything that you want. The next way that is really common and great way to use parallel compression is with auxes or buses. In this case, you would take like your entire drum kit and you would send your entire drum kit to an aux, but instead of one aux, you would send it to two auxes, both set with the same input. So both auxes have the exact same signal on them. The full drum kit is running through both of them identically. And then you would put compression on one of them and blend to taste. Now those first two techniques will work with any compressor out there. It doesn't matter what compressor hardware or software, that is how you would set it up. The third way is with compressors that have a mix knob. Now there are some hardware compressors and certainly plenty of software plug-in compressors that have a mix knob. And so what you would do with these is you would put it right on your snare drum or right on your vocal. You put that compressor on there and then you would pull the mix down from 100%. When it's at 100%, that's all of the compressed signal, and as you pull that down closer to zero, it becomes more of the uncompressed signal. This is also parallel compression. You're just doing it within one particular compressor. Now, right before I jump into Pro Tools and show you exactly how to set this up and let you hear the differences with all of this, I just want to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. Everything that you see in this video, the plugins, any of the hardware that you see in this video, there'll be links in the description below to go check it out. There's also full links for everything that I use on a daily basis here in my studio down in the description. And if you use those links, it really helps the channel out, helps me keep making videos and tutorials just like this one. Once you click any one of those links, you can buy anything you ever need. So anytime you ever need any piece of gear, regardless of what it might be, jump on any one of my videos, click on any one of the links, and purchase your gear there. I really, really appreciate it. Let's jump into Pro Tools and let's take a look at how to set this up and take a listen to some sound examples. So let's take a look at the first technique for parallel compression. Now I've got a drum kit pulled up here. It's kind of mixed. I've put some stuff on it, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on parallel compression on this snare drum. Here we go. So here's what the drum sounds, here's what the drums sound like on their own. Okay, so the first technique, we are going to work on this snare drum, and we are just going to duplicate the track for this first way. So it's gonna be Shift Option D on Pro Tools, and we're just gonna, okay, we're gonna keep everything exactly the same. Now we have two snare drums here that are identical. They're the same thing, they even have the same EQ on them, which is generally how I would do it. So we are just going to put a compressor on this one, on the duplicate, and for this instance, I'm just gonna use the FabFilter compressor. Links in the description for everything you see in this video, but I'm just gonna use the FabFilter compressor because that way you guys can really see what's going on. We're gonna use pumping, we're gonna pull this release down to somewhere around 25 milliseconds, and we're gonna push the attack up to somewhere around the same, and then obviously the snare drum is gonna be louder, because there's two of them now, but here's what that looks like. Let's pull this down. Let's pull the release faster. So now there's gonna be an increase in volume, but here's the difference. So if we pull these both down to try to simulate the same volume, and so what you hear is a lot more attack and a lot more aggression, a lot more presence, but without it's sounding overly compressed. That's the whole point of parallel compression, is to compress something to give it more vibe, more character, more impact, more snap, more resonance. You could use as many words as you'd like there, but without taking away too much of the naturalness. Now, I'm gonna just put that same compressor, let's just listen to the snare drum with only the compression and see what that sounds like. Now that doesn't sound bad, but it sounds compressed to me. So if we pull that back down and turn them both back on, that can be the best of both worlds. You get more snap, more attack, more aggression, more presence in the mix, but without it sounding compressed too much. Okay, so that's the first technique. You would duplicate any track that you want, kick, snare, overhead, vocal, literally anything, just duplicate it, put a compressor on one of them, blend it to taste. That's something else that I should show you real quick, is if we make this ratio real hard and the knee real hard, and then let's compress this really, really hard. And then you can just blend it into taste. That sounds pretty good. So you would always want to play with the blend of the uncompressed and of the compressed to taste. And you can compress it really hard and blend it lighter. You can compress it really soft and blend it more. You just want to experiment with that. But that is how you would do it with any compressor that doesn't have a blend knob. Any hardware, any software, this is the first way that you would do that. Now, the next way that I use parallel compression is on the entire drums. So what we're gonna do here, we've got our drums grouped. So what we wanna do is we want to make a new pair of auxes. So we're gonna go stereo, we're gonna put 2 in there right here, and then we're gonna go down to auxes, and I usually name this, whatever my auxes are all in caps, regardless of if it's a parallel compression thing or not, so that way I know the difference between my auxes and my tracks from the mix window. So that's what that looks like. Now we've got drums 1 and drums 2. If you hold down Shift and Option in Pro Tools, you can change the inputs of both of these. We're gonna change both of them to bus 1 and 2. And we're gonna take all the drum shells plus the overheads. I usually don't put the room tracks for drums in this, but we're gonna take all these drums, and again, you highlight them all, and you hold Shift and Option, and we're just going to output bus 1, and now all of our drums are coming out bus 1 and 2 simultaneously. These are 2 identical buses here. So let's listen to that. So same exact sound as we had before. Now, on one of these parallels or on one of these buses, this is the second way that I would normally do it, is you can put a group of tracks together and send them out to two separate things. So let's go ahead, actually let's use the exact same compressor just so that way you guys can really watch what's going on. Again, we're gonna pull the release way down, we're gonna push the attack fairly up. Let's change the character to, let's change it to punch for this one. We're gonna go, just for the sake of making this kind of exaggerated, again, I can't overstress, you wanna play around with this and figure out what works best for you and for the sound that you're after, but we're gonna go with this again. Really hard knee, 100-to-1 ratio, basically limiting here, and let's hear what that sounds like. Now that's sounding pretty compressed, which is cool, because then I can pull this drum bus down here and we can start blending in this compressed drum bus with the uncompressed drum bus to get a sound that we like. So let's see what happens when we raise that up. That sounds pretty good to me. Now, obviously, this is out of context. You would never listen to the drum kit on its own when you're mixing. And so usually I would push this a little harder in the mix than you would actually do it right now listening to the drums on their own. But listening to them on their own, that feels pretty good. Lots of vibe, lots of character, more punch, more aggression, more sustain out of the drums. So that is the second way that you would set up parallel compression. Now the third way that you would set up parallel compression is with a compressor that has a mix knob. Now my mix bus compressor is this Serpent SB4001. Again, links in the description below. One of my favorite things about this, even though it's an SSL style compressor, it actually has more options, more settings than an actual SSL, which I find extremely useful. But it also has a wet dry knob. So you have parallel compression built right into this bus. And I will commonly start the mix with it all the way on wet. And then towards the end of the mix, I'll walk it back a little to 80% wet and 20% dry, but that's one of my favorite things to do. So there are hardware compressors that do have parallel mix knobs on them, and of course there are software compressors. So let's take a look at the overheads and let me show you what it sounds like and what it looks like setting up parallel compression with just a single plug-in. So here's what the overhead sounds like. And so we're gonna we're gonna use the same compressor again, because why not? And so these FabFilter compressors, nearly all of the FabFilter plugins have a mix control right here. You just hover your mouse over this area and then there's an actual mix control right here. And so let's go ahead and set this up exactly like we had it. We're gonna do a little bit slower release than we have done previously. We're gonna do punch again. We're not gonna do as hard of a ratio. Okay, so there's a pretty over-compressed sound. I would never compress overheads this hard, ever, under any circumstance. But if you're using parallel compression, half the point is to use more compression and then blend it with the dry, uncompressed signal. So now that we've over-compressed this overhead, let's pull that mix back and see what happens. That sounds pretty good. So let me bypass this so that way you can kind of actually hear the difference here. So it's doing a couple things there. It's making the resonance of the cymbals longer. It's making, in the context of a mix, the actual crash, like the moment when he hits, would poke through the mix less, but the resonance of the cymbals would be longer. And as well, a bigger, roomier drum sound with the snare and the kick drum and all that kind of stuff. So regardless of if you liked these exact exact samples. You want to do this to taste. This is just the technique. I just want to show you how to do this, and then you do it to taste however you see fit. That's the most important thing to take away from this. Something new that I want to encourage you all to do, I want the comment section of these videos to be a collaborative effort between all of us in the music community. The reason why I make these videos is because I want to help people out, and I'd like to be the mentor to other people that I never had. And one of the ways that I think we can all help with this is by helping people out in the comments. I definitely can't get back to all of the comments, but if you have any questions or any thoughts, please leave them in the comments below, and I would strongly encourage any of you that are more experienced in mixing or in music production, try to help people out. Try to reply to people's comments. Let's all be a good community and try to help each other out, because that's really what this whole thing is about here. That is parallel compression secrets of the pros. I really hope that this helped you. I hope you have a better understanding of parallel compression and how to set it up. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell next to the subscribe tab too. I know a lot of you don't have the bell turned on. If you don't mind, that'd be great. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.